Well, I'm really excited. My 17th game in 14 weeks coming up here on Saturday, JB. Going to Mount Union.
Wait, hang on, time out, Frank.
What's up?
I know that neither one of us are really math whizzes, but I think this is actually your 19th game of the 21 fall season, and just bear with me here because you had the first half of the season you were all over the place, right? Week 1 you were down in Jersey to see the Mariners take on the Devils, and then you shot out to Pennsylvania for our first Mount Union game day. I guess we're going to be doing that again on Saturday from Alliance this time. And then on your way home through upstate New York, you happened to make a pit stop in Buffalo and caught the exciting end of the St. John Fisher Buffalo State game. And this started a little run you had there, Frank, where there were all these close games, like week 2, 7 points with Endicott, WPI. RPI hung on by 4 points against Stevenson. Then week 3, you're out in God's country, there, Morrisville, to see the Saints take on the Mustangs. Then you saw that close game down in New Jersey. And then you flew out to Texas for one of the best games of the whole season between Hardin-Simmons and Mary Hardin-Baylor. The next week, you see another close call with Hobart-Ithaca. You catch the Courage Bowl nightcap on the back end. You were driving to try to get to Endicott in week 6, but got stuck in traffic in Boston, so you shot down to Worcester and caught Catholic beating the Engineers of WPI. And then week 7 was another triple header. It was crazy. You saw, Muhlenberg beat Hopkins on a Friday night, and then made it up to New York City in time to see the Merchant Marine take care of MIT. And then you also happened to pop over to Throgs Neck to see Gallaudet defeat SUNY Maritime late. Week 8.
Yeah,
week
well,
9,
hold on. I still have to apologize for that game because we never did get our audio fixed on those interviews. I still feel horrible about that one. So that's a big asterisk on that game. But you're right. And just for those out there, and Sam Atkinson taught me, we always have this propensity to call it Gallaudet. It's Gallaudet. The U is apparently silent in it. So we will endeavor to get at least something right about Gallaudet this season. They had a good season nonetheless. Go ahead. Where else was I apparently I don't know where I am half the time.
Well, we were both there week 9 for the exciting, Hobart Union overtime game, and then we got you to finally settle down and just be in your office there for 4 or 5 hours as we did the D3 Blitzer show, and then back on the road after popular demand, you ended up going down to see Toops' last Secretary's Cup game. We did the Bracket Blitz show the week after, so a couple of weeks off there. But you did do 14 games in the first 7 weeks of the D3 season. I think we can cut you a little slack there, Frank. Week 13, you're on the road again to see RPI in Cortland, another close game, another playoff game, and here we are. Interestingly enough, I thought you saw some more close calls, and I thought that the away teams won more, but apparently your record is pretty even. The home teams are 8-10. The away team is obviously 10-8. You saw 9 what I'll call close games that happened to be either a touchdown or less. There was that big block there, as I said, between weeks 3 and really games 3 through 9, where you saw a ton of games, and then we took a little break, and then the last 4 or so games that you saw were all close ones. So all the teams that you've seen that are still alive, not surprisingly, are 5-0. You've been to 2 RPI games. RPI's won those. You've been to a Mary Hardin-Baylor game. They won that, and same thing with Mount Union and Muhlenberg. So interesting little stats there. So Frank, you're going to be pushing 20 games, I think, before it's all said and done, which is pretty amazing to me, man. That's a whole nother level of dedication.
Well, I'm going to be making the first of 2 trips out to Eastern Ohio over the next 3 weeks this weekend. Remember the Stag Bowl's in Canton, Ohio, which is just the west of, I believe it's the west of Alliance, Ohio. I'm sure if I'm wrong on that, I will get plenty of hate mail
on that. They'll tell you. Yep.
Yeah, no kidding, but looking forward to it for sure. JB, 19 games in 14 weeks. We'll make it 20 at least this season in 16 weeks. We'll see what happens with the semifinals, he said. And he also said, you're watching season 14 of In the Huddle. So you see on the bottom of the screen, we have kind of a question, because it's only 2 colors left in the playoffs again. Purple, which I'm wearing as an homage a little bit to the purple champs, and red, which he's wearing as an homage, a red of RPI over there. So purple or red. That's all we got left in the 8 teams, and we'll go through all those teams and go through crunch time. But JB, as always, second round done, and you watched a lot of the action as I was freezing my butt off in Cortland on Saturday. That will be repeating itself this weekend, I'm sure, around the same temperature frame. But what'd you think of the action?
Well, I think it was there were some great finishes there near the end of the day, but things didn't necessarily pan out, at least like I thought they would. I mean, I went 5-3 in our picks. There were a couple of upsets where the lower ranked team, the road team, won. I guess you could say, or I guess on the flip side, there was Central coming back and beating Wheaton. Was where they were the home team. But yeah, there were a couple of games in there that turned out not exactly like we expected, and so made for a really entertaining day of championship quality football, and we saw some great performances. And I know with you guys having that Ghilardi Trophy show coming up next week, some of the leading candidates had opportunities to kind of showcase themselves, and we'll talk about a couple of them a little later on who really had some big performances. But yeah, we're getting down to the Elite Eight, the sort of the proverbial cream of the crop, and so yeah, these are the best teams left.
Well, you don't want to hear about us or from us too much. We've got interviews coming up. I had an interview with Spencer Kirin from Muhlenberg that's going to be coming up in a little bit. And then we do Lineman Love with RPI. You'll see what I mean by that later on as we begin to preview the North Central RPI game coming up a little bit later. But you know what time it is,
you like
folks?
My Ralph Isernia outfit.
Coach didn't think we'd actually wear his gear. But you've got that on, and I guess I can put this on for a minute here.
We're East Region guys originally, so we can support our region, our underdog. Apparently we just can't play football out here in the East, so
Coach Thorne is looking at this saying, Rossi, I'm never doing another interview with you impromptu ever again after I wear this. But we'll take that off and we'll say it's time for crunch time for the second round of the playoffs in the fall 2021 Division III college football season. Well, folks, we have no video for this game. Well, actually, we got one little piece of video we were able to scrounge up, and this is Linfield at St. John's. And, Linfield in this game, late in the third, had taken a 14-point lead on a Joel Valadez 11-yard touchdown reception. So the teams would eventually volley score from there, with Linfield going up what seemed to be an insurmountable 10 points with a minute left. 22 seconds later, Blake Patrick scored a Johnny Magical 52-yard touchdown reception from Chris Backus, and that made it 31-28. They still needed the onside kick, though, and here is that onside kick. Linfield takes possession and wins the game by that 31-28 score. Wyatt Smith, 28 for 40, 273 yards, 3 passing touchdowns for the Ghilardi semifinalists. Chris Backus for St. John's, 15 for 36, 254 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions. they will face the winner of Birmingham Southern UMHB, and you know who that is. That's Mary Hardin-Baylor. Let's go to the first quarter. 7:40 left. KJ Miller gets a 21-yard touchdown pass from Brian Redding as Kyle King was out again in this game. Hoping he feels better. I heard he was a little bit down and out there last week from his dad, but it seems like the prognosis is good for him. Who starts as quarterback? Anyone's guess, but it's 7-0. Then the ensuing kickoff, Birmingham Southern's DJ Albright goes 89 yards. I was buying time here because this is going to take a little while to run here, and he runs all the way to the house. 7-7 was the score then. 5 minutes later, though, KJ Miller again, a 60-yard touchdown pass from Ryan Redding, makes it 14-7, Mary Hardin-Baylor. In the second quarter, midway through it, Trey Patterson was intercepted by Jefferson Fritz, Gallardi semifinalist, and he returns it to the Birmingham Southern 7-yard line. 2 plays later, Kenneth Cormier gets the 3-yard touchdown run to make it 21-7, Mary Hardin-Baylor. The final score, 42-7, UMHB. Redding, 316 total yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Chris Schufert for BSC, 10 rushes, 60 yards, and Jefferson Fritz, 7 tackles, 1 interception. He punts, he returns punts, he intercepts balls, tackles, he does everything out there. Does he do windows? I don't know. But we'll then go to we'll preview the game later on between Linfield and Mary Hardin-Baylor. JB, I will bring you in right now, actually, I should say. The 2 games in the upper left bracket, what'd you think?
Well, I was really, I think we both picked Linfield to beat St. John's, but I was kind of surprised that they got out to that 14-point lead. They were a little stronger than I thought they might be. But credit the Wildcats. They're backing up a lot of the stuff that they're bringing here. So, but going back to that Fritz performance, he actually executed like a 40-yard fake punt right before the interception that got called back, and then he still punts the ball 40 yards, and then he makes the interception. Totally changes the whole dynamic of the game, and it's just, what can't that guy do? Just an impressive defensive and special teams player. So
next up, it's the lower left bracket, and Whitewater leads that bracket and led in this game from pretty much start to finish, 45-0 over DePauw. It was the Alex Pete show. First, a 3-yard touchdown run with 4:25 left first quarter made it 7-0 Whitewater. Then 11 minutes left second quarter, Alex Pete, 39-yard touchdown run, 17-0 Whitewater at that point. Then 3 minutes later, hey, guess what? It's Alex Pete again. 56-yard touchdown run this time. 24-0 Whitewater. And in case you thought he was done, you're wrong. Third quarter, 4 minutes into it, Alex Pete, 40-yard touchdown run. That made it 45-0. That was the final score. 14 rushes, 209 yards in a playoff game, folks. 4 rushing touchdowns. The defense for Whitewater, though, no slouches. 9 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, an interception. Max Myler rushing and a passing touchdown on the day. Then the game heard round the world, or bracket, or whatever you want to call it. Wheaton at Central. Wheaton led 14-10 heading into the fourth quarter. Let's take it from there. 45 seconds into the fourth, Adam Torini gets a 6-yard touchdown pass from Luke Anthony. It's 21-10 Wheaton at that point. 3 minutes later, Tanner Schminke gets a 30-yard touchdown pass from Blaine Hawkins. That's with a conversion miss, 21-16 Wheaton at that point. About 3.5 minutes later, Jeff Herbers gets an 8-yard touchdown pass from Blaine Hawkins. The conversion this time is good, so they take a 24-21 lead. 6 minutes later, 2:41 left, Terrell Brown gets a 13-yard touchdown pass from Luke Anthony. 28-24 Wheaton. They think they have it, right? Well, here's the last play.
Clock winds, snap to Hawkins, last play of the game, lobs it for Schminke, he makes the catch, yes! Touchdown, Central! Final play of the game, Tanner Schminke, touchdown! You a little excited? Ball game.
I guess I get excited and a little bit hoarse myself as an announcer for something like that. 30-28, they did have to come out and kneel down on the 2-point conversion eventually, as is required in college football. They win it 30-28. Blaine Hawkins, 41 for 65, plus I think 12 rushes as well, or at least quote-unquote rushes. sacks are considered rushes in college. 434 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I think they had 81 total plays. So you do the math on that. He essentially handled the ball to fruition 77 out of 81 plays, if my math was correct on that. He led the game-winning touchdown drive, as you know, and Luke Anthony from Wheaton, 3 passing, 1 rushing touchdowns. Okay, you got his name right. What do you think about this guy, without giving away maybe a discussion we'll have about him a little bit later?
I mean, it was the game of the day. It was so exciting. I thought going into it, Wheaton, was going to win this game potentially, and that's what you get with great players like Hawkins. I mean, he just, drove his team down, got the winning score with 6 seconds. I know we were sort of texting back and forth about, was there a runoff because the play, there was a guy, the receiver, who was down. Apparently not the case in college. It is in pros. End of the day, really capped off the second round with a lot of excitement. It was a great D3 football game.
Just to explain specifically, because the clock was stopped for the first down, that did not forced no runoff situation. Essentially, if the clock had restarted and the player went down at that point, there would have been a required runoff and the game would have been over. That's the weirdness of the rule of the 10-second runoff for an injury timeout, just for those wondering out there. But it was adjudicated correctly. Let's go to the upper right bracket here. La Crosse at North Central. Again, no video here, but I'll tell you the halftime score was 20-7 North Central, but La Crosse got within 7 points twice in the second half, the score being 27-20 until Terrence Hill scored with 6:07 left on a 10-yard rushing touchdown. The final score would be that 34-20 score that caused with that touchdown. Ethan Greenfield, 30 rushes, 198 yards, again in a playoff game, folks. 2 rushing touchdowns. Jacob Parks for La Crosse, 19 for 38, 323 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and an interception. Elijah Alt with 12 tackles for La Crosse. Then the game I attended, RPI Cortland. Let's go through all the scoring here. First, 9:41 left in the first quarter. Bree Segala gets a 3-yard touchdown run. Gallardi semifinalist, mind you. And that made it 7-0 Cortland. I should also have said that Max Smiler is a Gallardi semifinalist way back when we were covering the other games, to be fair here. 3:52 left first quarter. RPI answers as Walker Sutton gets an 8-yard touchdown pass from George Marinopoulos to make it 7-7. We go to halftime, tied at 7. We go through almost the entire third quarter tied at 7 until Peter Lombardi gets a 4-yard touchdown pass from George Marinopoulos to make it 14-7 RPI. Back and forth, some turnovers, etc. happen. 2:54 left fourth quarter. RPI thinks they've iced the game with this Dylan Burnett 42-yard touchdown run. 21-7 RPI, but hold on, a minute 14 later, J.J. Lapp, 29-yard touchdown pass from Bree Segala makes it 21-14 RPI. Onside kick time, and boy, they bat it forward. It's all over the place. RPI had a chance to secure it. They didn't, and Cortland gets the ball. So here's the final play.
Bree Segala looking, going across the middle of the field, and that ball is intercepted. And
let's see.
It is RPI football.
Francis Perry with a huge interception there. 21-14 final. RPI wins as Dylan Burnett gets 32 rushes, 155 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Bree Segala for Cortland, 23 for 30, 245 yards, 1 passing, 1 rushing touchdown, and an interception. JB, you look at the stats in this game, and you would think if you didn't see the time of possession and the actual score that maybe Cortland had won this game, but time of possession, ball control, rushing game, those are the keys to success for RPI in this part of the brackets.
Yeah, and it's been what RPI has been doing all year. They find ways to win close games in the most unlikely fashions. I mean, how many onside kick attempts have we seen in the last couple of weeks that have actually been successful? Statistically, they tell you that it's like 5 or 10%, maybe even less. I mean, it's just incredible what's been happening here. But as usual, the cardiac engineers find a way to eke out a win. People, keep picking against them and keep saying that, they're not this or that. And here they are in the Elite Eight, and they're going to take on the national champs, and we'll see what happens.
It'll be interesting. Again, we'll preview the game coming up after crunch time, but we have one more piece of the bracket to talk about from last Saturday. Johns Hopkins at Mount Union. Johns Hopkins would start the scoring by going up 5-0 on Mount Union after a safety from a holding call in the end zone against Mount Union, and then the ensuing field goal. Eventually, it would be 8-7 Hopkins when Harrison Wellman gets a 2-yard touchdown pass from Ryan Stevens midway through the second quarter. That made it 15-7 Hopkins. But Wayne Ruby Jr. with 2:40 left second quarter gets a 53-yard touchdown pass from Braxton Plunk, Gagliardi semifinalist. 15-14 Johns Hopkins at that point, but a late field goal in the half made it 17-15 Mount Union at halftime. Midway through the third, Wayne Ruby Jr. gets his third receiving touchdown of the game, this time a 20-yard touchdown pass from Plunk. 24-15 Mount Union. 2 plays into Johns Hopkins' next drive, Ryan Stevens intercepted by Malik Britt and returned to the 21 of Johns Hopkins. That led to 2 plays later, Jaden Manley getting a 19-yard touchdown pass from Braxton Plunk. That was pretty much the distance they needed to hold off Johns Hopkins, 45-35. Plunk, 21 for 36, 256 yards, 4 passing touchdowns and an interception. Ryan Stevens for Hopkins, 31 for 50, 359 yards, 3 passing, 1 rushing touchdown, but 3 interceptions on the day kind of sealed the deal there. And finally, Muhlenberg at Del Val. The first possession of the game took about 5 minutes, and it was Muhlenberg's Mitch Daniel getting a 5-yard touchdown pass from Michael Dukowski to make it 7-0 Muhlenberg. Then, really nothing but... Thank you. Good point. Gagliardi semifinalist Michael Nikowski. Nothing but punts for the rest of the first quarter. Eventually, in the battle for field position, though, Thomas Jenkins gets a 26-yard pass from Michael Nikowski for the touchdown. It's 14-0, 4:47 left first half. But with a minute left in the second quarter, what folks are calling a major moment occurred. First, in this whole transition of things, Michael Nikowski sacked and loses the ball to Anthony Nobile. And so it's basically the 16-yard line. Del Val has a chance to have the lead before halftime. But Muhlenberg, on a 4th and 11, as they skewed the field goal opportunity, Daquan Bohannon for Del Val is intercepted by Muhlenberg. Jay McGill gets that interception in the end zone to thwart the attempt there to have the lead. 14-0 halftime score, 14-0 final score, as Muhlenberg's defense has 9 sacks and held Del Val scoreless on 3 trips inside their 10-yard line. Michael Nikowski, 23 for 39, 256 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. Del Val has to start asking themselves the value of having a kicking game they can trust in, because that's part of the equation why they didn't go for field goals in those 3 trips. That could have made the game very interesting, although they did have a legit opportunity to score there at the end of the first half, JB.
Yeah, they absolutely did. But, I mean, this Mules defense, this is like the second playoff year in a row. I mean, we have to, 2020 didn't happen. We get it. But back in 2019, the Mules did the same thing. They pitched 2 shutouts in the opening 2 rounds. It's just incredible, how this team has turned it on in recent weeks. And Coach Milne and, Corey David, the defensive coordinator for Muhlenberg, has just got this unit playing superb. I know you spoke with Spencer Kirin. We'll get into that a little bit. I mean, he's been outstanding. He was definitely way up there on my all-region votes for D3Football.com. Thanks for them, trusting me with that little assignment. So anyway, yeah, the Mules D they showed up and they proved somebody wrong. That's for sure.
Needless to say, that's crunch time for round 2 of the Fall 2021 playoffs in Division III college football. JB, time for your MVPs for Week 13, round 2 of the playoffs. And do we have the spelling correct this time? Do we have it right? Because,
is it Lane Haskins? No.
No, sir.
I say that in jest. I mean, here we go. Blaine Hawkins is 1 touchdown pass away from breaking the NCAA record, not just for Division III. This would be for all in the history of college football. He's tied for first place with Brett Elliott, ironically, who's also a D3 former player and now a coach on the sideline of the Linfield Wildcats. He's probably going to set the record on Saturday. I know that Whitewater would like to try to shut him out, and it's certainly within the realm of possibility given how strong that defense is. But he that drive at the end of the Wheaton game might have won him the Gallardi Trophy, Frank. I mean, it was an incredible comeback. 2 minutes 37 seconds. Like you said, he had the ball and affected 77 out of 81 something plays. Just a remarkable individual performance. I mean, obviously he needed the help from his offensive line, his receivers, his running backs. It wasn't just him carrying the day, but what an incredible season. And he's one TD pass away from making history. So my offensive MVP goes to Blaine Hawkins.
On the defensive side of the ball, somebody I've interviewed twice over the last few years that we always joke around that he was part of the Pete Fredenberg's first recruiting class at UMHB because it seems like he's been there forever. But he is, this is it, the final stanza for Jefferson Fritz. Woo!
Yeah, I mean, he was averaging over 40 yards per punt. He did the fake punt that got called back. That wasn't his fault. And when his team really needed a big play, he makes the interception, drops the ball off, basically right at the, in the red zone for his offense. They score 21-7. That game basically ended right there because of, Fritz and then, that's the subsequent touchdown. He's just an awesome player. I know he may probably not get drafted into the NFL. It doesn't happen very often for D3 guys, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's playing some kind of professional football. He's just an outstanding athlete, strong, fast, versatile. He could go the undrafted free agent route. He could play in there's a number of new leagues opening up in 22. So
the NAL, I'm thinking about NAL Arena League is using Ironman now, and here's a player that is the Ironman of Ironman when you think about what his versatility on the field is. So it may be useful for him if he can't get a look elsewhere to use an opportunity like that. We'll see where it goes. It's going to be interesting, to say the least. Not to cut you off, just want to run by the undefeated teams real quick that we have left here. Williams in Region 1, which is not playoff eligible. Region 2, blank. So, we lose our final remaining one in Region 2, which was Cortland. Remember, Region 1 was Del Val. Murrayhawk Baylor in Region 3, Mount Union in Region 4, Central, North Central in Region 5. We could walk away still with both of them as undefeated. And Linfield and Wisconsin Whitewater in Region 6, same thing. You could still have Region 5 and Region 6 look perfect by the end of this, at the cost of Mary Hardin Baylor. Well, actually, it's Wisconsin Whitewater and Central. So no, one of those has to lose. So you could have three of those teams make it through ultimately. Okay, let's go through the games, our predictions on them. We're going to be somewhat brief here because we want the players in our interviews to do most of the talking for the rest of the show. We're going to start in the upper left, Linfield at Mary Hardin Baylor. I'll let you start here as I will remind folks that Linfield won by 3 against St. John's, and Mary Hardin Baylor, with Ryan Redding as quarterback, wins by 35. Is there a quarterback controversy in Belton right now?
I don't think so. I think it's one of those things where it's just, unfortunately for Kyle King, he struggled with a few, different injury, health issues, but the fact that they have a guy who can step in and execute the offense. I mean, ultimately, this offensive line for the Crusaders is really the difference makers here because they give the QBs time. They open up the holes for the running game. I think, will ultimately be, the difference here. I mean, Linfield was very stout against the run, against the Johnnies, but I just feel like the size and speed of the Crusaders is just up another notch. And, seeing Linfield on film, they are not physically, they're not a huge team as far as that goes. And I think over time, being on the road, et cetera, the size and speed of Mary Hardin Baylor will eventually, turn the tide in their favor. But with Wyatt Smith back there, I mean, anything's possible. I mean, thank goodness the Crusaders have guys like Fritz in the secondary, because they might need a big play by him, an interception or some kind of thing that flips the field to keep this Linfield offense out of the end zone.
Score?
I think it feels like this is going to be a more lower scoring game. I'll take the Crusaders to win it 28-17.
Linfield is that little engine that could, until it seems like Mary Hardin-Baylor derails them every time in some way, shape, or form. Remember the Sam Riddle days when he was quarterback there, prolific? You just could never get over this hump of Mary Hardin-Baylor. And now Wyatt Smith is going to be facing the same, conundrum here of how to beat this team with the defense that just has been purring. For as much as we talk about that Trinity game and how close it was, let's remember that defense was stout throughout the game. And all field goals for Trinity? They didn't get into the end zone, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I think you're right, lower scoring. I think that the size of the defense is going to wear down that line, and Wyatt Smith's going to get a little bit more penetration into his backfield than he's going to like, and that pocket's going to collapse pretty quickly. I'm going to say here Mary Hardin-Baylor does win this game, and a somewhat close one, 21-14. So now let's go lower left, and that means we're going to Wisconsin Whitewater versus Central. By the way, the biggest fans in the country right now of Central would be Mary Hardin-Baylor, because most likely Central would have to travel to Mary Hardin-Baylor if both of those teams win on that side of the bracket based on 2019 playoff performance scenarios that go into the equation here. So I'm going to say here, Wisconsin Whitewater is actually my current pick to win the title. I was asked this today, and I've been asked a couple times the past week who I have. The versatility in offense right now, Alex Pete is just a runaway train. And we've seen, on the Bracket Blitz show, some of that versatility and great running power he has. And Max Myler, it complements his game because they have to guard Pete, with how many people, and gives Myler the opportunity to have some pocket time and ability to throw the ball. But the size of the bodies and the ability of those big bodies, that's where this is. It is no accident Quinn Miners came from Wisconsin Whitewater, folks. They really do make NFL-type prospects out of their linemen at Whitewater. I know what happened in 2019 in the Stag Bowl, but this team has matured immensely over the last season. And so in this game in particular, I'm going to say Wisconsin Whitewater wins this 37-10. I don't think Central is going to be able to score more than 10 points in this game. We'll see what happens, though.
Yeah, I also like Whitewater. I think it'll be a little bit of a closer game, maybe like 35-21. I think Haskins is going to break that record at some point, even if it's in the second half.
What'd you say?
I said. It's subliminal.
Okay.
At some point, Hawkins will break the NCAA record. And maybe in 2023, I'll pronounce his name correctly.
We're leaving that in, by the way, so it's bleeped out. So just keep going.
Of course. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah.
What's your score? If you're going to go there?
Hawkins is going to win. Hawkins is going to win the Gagliardi. You can take that to the bank. I bet you that's a done deal. I would love it if someone like Ian Blankenship, who from the Merchant Marine because of the military academy, the service, all that kind of thing. But it just feels like with the potentially 62 touchdown passes or more that Hawkins has got it. Quarterbacks tend to win this award a lot more often, even though maybe you could make an argument that, the running back for North Central might be the best player in all of Division III. But anyway, yeah.
Don't be bitter, JB. It happens to all of us. Do you know how many times I can't even fix my own errors because post-production editing won't allow me to? So it happens, buddy. What was your final score?
I think I said 35-21.
Okay, just want to make sure we had that. Sorry about that. Let's go upper right, and we're going to have some discussion here, actually. First off, I went over to RPI. Since I'm not going to get to this game in Chicago, I felt like we should at least cover it in some way. And, yep, exactly. Tommy Olausen and Josh Cohen, the center and defensive lineman, respectively. Good linemen, well-spoken guys. You're going to see that in a second here. When we talk about North Central, we talk about the size of their lines and their size generally. And so let's, talk about that very fact here with these guys. Guys, congratulations on getting this far. Obviously, it's been a tough playoff battle so far. We'll start on the offensive side of things here. Mm-hmm. The run really dominated things, helped the time of possession, and a lot more last week. Tom, tell me exactly, was that game plan? Was that developing as the game went on? And how important is it going to be this Saturday?
That was a game plan going in. We knew that if we started to establish the run better and really get our guys going in the backfield, Dylan and Delano back there, we trust those guys to get those gritty yards down there, and we know that if we can establish a run, control the ball throughout the game, it'll open up passes, it'll open up other things that our offense can do, and it really just worked out these last 2 weeks, and we hope to keep it rolling.
Josh, we talk a lot about size of players when we get to this stage of the playoffs, the quarterfinals. There are big men on either side of the ball, especially on the lines. But last Saturday, you had some good success, especially late in the game, getting through and making things happen defensively. Talk about Cortland compared to North Central from what you've seen on film so far.
Yeah, they're definitely similar in a lot of ways. Big, strong, physical guys. That's what you're always going to expect this deep into the playoffs. Definitely with North Central, we've noticed they have great motors, really good work ethic. They're blocking until the whistle every play. Around the same size as Cortland, but yeah, they just both teams really just have a bunch of workhorses that are really gonna push limits of our D line and really give us some great competition this Saturday.
Offensive linemen often get tired out by a team like even Wheaton. We've seen this happen with North Central, the CCIW teams, and some of the OAC teams and ASC teams out there. Does that concern you at all, that as this game goes along, if you guys don't win the time possession, that it could wear down the offensive line?
No, I'm not really concerned. I mean, we've been doing great things this year as far as offensive line play, and I really think that we're prepared for anything. Whatever the game throws at us, we'll be ready.
So the story, as we've had it throughout the season, is obviously the families wanting to be inside this stadium and not getting the chance to on most games, and then coming out and supporting you guys. I've seen your parents and both up on the hill and on the sideline shooting photos last week. How important has that been to have the families around you during what I would call some trying times here at RPI this year?
It's awesome. It stinks that we weren't able to have fans this year and everything, but the support from the fans that do show up and stand up on that hill has been great. All the parents coming out, giving us support. We couldn't ask for a better group of people coming out for us and our families and everything.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that so many parents, at Cortland, it felt like our sideline was more full in the bleachers than the Cortland sideline, which is awesome to see all those parents there coming from all over. At Endicott, the whole pep band was there. We have a whole fan bus going to North Central, which is pretty insane.
Chicago,
that's a huge drive. Just having people that are coming, Trevor Bisson's from Louisiana. I think his dad has come to pretty much every game in the playoffs that his son's been playing in, which is just, it's incredible to see the support we have from all over the country, and it's meant the world to all the players that we can have all of our parents come and watch us.
Was Bisson's dad at the Union game by any chance?
I believe so. He was. Yeah, that was awesome.
One not to miss. Yeah. I think I'll leave this interview now. Guys, here's one other thing, and I love to talk to linemen because you guys are more honest in these interviews than anybody else. I don't know what it is about you guys. We love our linemen. There's a coach out west that complained a little bit about the road that certain teams take, especially on the road, in the eastern bracket versus the western bracket. Tell us about the road you guys have been on in the last two games, and if you think that kind of comment is warranted so far.
Yeah, it's definitely easy to say from an outsider's perspective that we might have had it easier coming from the East Coast. Maybe they think football here isn't as good, whatever they want to say. But when you get down to the facts, I mean, we didn't get to play any football last year. We've had a super tough year, like with our scheduling. Like every team we've played has been good, very good. They've all tested us. So I mean, if you really look down and sit down and look at the facts and really break it down, like we've had just as hard of a schedule as anyone else in the country. So I think some of those comments, like, they don't really bother me, or none of us really. We kind of take it on the chest, like it's kind of not motivation, but we're just like, oh, okay, like that's how people see us. Like let's prove them wrong a little bit. But so yeah, I mean, we don't really pay attention to those comments.
I feel like it's been a common theme this year, like that, like RPI, like has had like an easy road, like hasn't really been tested, like, but like if you look at the facts and like look at our league, like we have the Ithacas, the Hobarts, the Unions. I mean, we played Cortland last week, who was a top 10 team. Montclair, Stevenson getting votes for the top 25. And I just think that, like, I don't really like to look at those comments because I know, like, what we're doing here, and, like, I know that we've been playing with good teams, and I don't know, I think it's been good.
Win, lose, or draw Saturday. Is this a successful season in your mind?
I'd say so. I mean, we always want to get the win, like that's for sure. But I mean, coming off a year where we weren't able to practice as a team and really just came in and all like bought into what the coaches were telling us all year, and I think it was a really successful year in terms of that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, just to get where we are right now from what we've had to go through with, like Tommy was saying, with COVID and missing that whole season, having like 20 guys at spring ball, no real upperclassmen got to be there. Just going through that and then having such success in the season that makes the season amazing in itself, and then making it to the Elite Eight is just like the cherry on top. So anything after this week, like you said, win, lose, or draw is either like, okay, we had an awesome year, or okay, we're still having an awesome year. So no matter what, it's still going to be one that I think we're all going to remember for the rest of our lives.
Yep. Well, I think it speaks for a lot of people to say be proud of yourselves for what you have done so
Thanks.
far, and we'll see what happens on Saturday, obviously. Yep. But the most important thing right now is you guys get to give shout-outs to any family, friends, teammates, coaches. One at a time, go ahead.
All right, shout out to my mom, Michelle Olausen, my dad, Tom Olausen. Thank you for coming and supporting me throughout these games. It's meant a lot. All my brothers, too, that have came and supported me, past teammates, and it's just been a great year, and thank you for everything.
Yeah, I'm going to shout out my parents as well. For coming to every game, even in Chicago, making that flight out there is something that it's pretty awesome. It means a lot to us. And then also just like all the alumni, the recent grads of the football team that are at every game they can get to. It's been awesome just to see those guys and really feel their support. And then everyone, not even people who have graduated, but just like everyone at RPI, we've had a lot of people like posting on Twitter, on Reddit and things, just like kind of shouting us out, and it feels really nice to be recognized as part of the school like that, which is really cool.
Yeah.
JB and I want to give a shout out to Annie Cohen because she was one of the best speakers about the whole situation we could have ever had. And Annie, thanks for that. Guys, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Good time talking with them. Let's just go to the next interview, then we'll talk about this a little bit. Ralph Isernia, who I asked, now they had a little bit more time, to tell me a little bit about the X's and O's when it comes to North Central.
Big, they're strong, they're fast, they're physical. They play hard. They run the football on an offensive, defensive side. Basically when we take a look at them, they're basically an all-star team of every team that we've played against in the last number of years, and we'll say, hey, this running back is like the running back from Hopkins, or this quarterback is like the quarterback from Cortland last week, or this defensive lineman's like the guy from Wesley that one year. And it's just that, there are no holes.
Well, I found it interesting. If you look at the stats as a whole from last weekend, if you threw out the time possession stat and didn't watch the game, you might think that Cortland had won the game. But you guys really looked at the ball control issue, it looked like, as the key to victory. Is that same idea what's the key to victory for RPI this Saturday against North Central?
Well, I think for both teams, if they can control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football, if you can get turnovers, if you can get some timely possessions with short fields, those sort of things, obviously that's going to be a recipe for success. I think, when you look at teams that have success in the playoffs, what travels well in December, it's going to be a running game, it's going to be holding on to the football, it's going to be great defense. So those are things that you look for. That's what's going to win games in December.
What have you been telling your guys about kind of the RPI tradition, the history? You weren't here obviously in 2003, but you know what happened back then. Mm-hmm. And just to sort of maybe get them out of the mindset of we're just happy to be here and getting them to realize, hey, we can compete against a team like this North Central team.
Yeah, a lot of our guys, were on the team back in 2018 when we were in the quarterfinals against Hopkins. So there is a lot of playoff experience, and especially at our quarterback position, there's a lot of playoff experience there as well. We did have a chance to bring back Coach King. Coach King came back and talked to our team right before the Shoes game this year, which was great, and the message that he sent was basically the guys that we have on our team and the way that we play right now is like the guys that he had on his team back in 2003 and for the 33 years that he was here. Hardworking, blue-collar guys that are playing as hard as they can every single snap. And I think that really resonated with our guys.
This is airing on Friday. You're probably en route as this does air, if not there already, in terms of being the Chicago area. What is the game plan here? When do you leave? How does this whole thing work for you?
Yeah, we're fortunate enough to have a charter flight, so we're going to leave out from Albany. We've got an airport just 10 minutes away from here from campus. So we'll leave out from Albany and we'll get into Chicagoland, somewhere around 12 o'clock Central Time, and then we'll go and work out at North Central, and then get to the hotel and do our meals and do our meetings just like we have the last number of weeks.
Any discussion with Coach Thorne? He's always been gracious on our side. Have you gotten a chance to talk with him at all?
He was part of our meeting on Monday and said, hey, anything that we need, just reach out, those sort of things. It's what's nice is at this point you have the NCAA that really takes care of a lot of those details for you. So it's good.
How proud are you of these guys? I mean, you and I talked right down the street over here in the preseason, and it almost felt like, okay, if RPI is a 500-plus season, that's great and everything, at least from my and other media people's perspectives. But to be here at this point, after everything else, how proud are you? Yeah,
I think, we always talk about the process. We always talk about what's it going to take to win a ball game. What is it going to take to have a good practice, to string good practices together, to string good performances together. We always talk about the process, and what our guys have had to go through. It was 628 days from the time that everything was shut down till we were able to get back together and actually have a complete practice together with our entire team. I think it speaks volumes to the character of our guys, the commitment that they have, the leadership that we have on this football team. You have 19 now with Trevor, we have 19 super seniors that have come back for that extra year. 14 of them are in graduate school here at RPI, and it's not cheap. The education that they're getting is, they're going to have a six-figure salary when they get out here. Certainly, that's a nice thing to have.
Hire us, guys.
That's a nice thing to have. But it was more about those guys getting back together and finishing this on the field. They certainly did not have a good taste in their mouth after the 2019 season. They got back to work really hard, got back in the weight room. They were throwing and running and lifting. You can see the energy and everything, and all of a sudden we were shut down. Coaches were furloughed. I was hoping that we would actually have a coaching staff when we came back, but that's the sign of the times. That's what was going on during COVID, and to have our coaches back, to have the players back, really everything that we've done, it's really a blessing. It's really great to get back out on the field and just be with these guys day in, day out.
I got to say, from a personal point of view, I've always been impressed with your coaching style, but by far to me, this was your greatest triumph in coaching, the most impressive coaching year I've seen from you. and from pretty much anybody in this region. It's been incredible to watch what you've been able to do. As I said to somebody coming in here, to me, Saturday was a win for your team, but coaching was involved in that win more than any other win I've seen in this playoff series so far. Congratulations to you on that, and good luck on this.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks to Coach Isernia. So, the thing that sticks out to me was how good the answer was about the whole Joe Smith, the East bracket. Traveling the East bracket isn't the challenge that is. It's traveling the West bracket, even though we don't have such things anymore. We kind of know what he's getting at. And, those guys kind of put it in perspective, which is essentially, don't take away from what we do here on this side. We play some really hard teams, and we're picked to lose every time, and we're on the road every time. And to say that's really not fair. Your thought and your thoughts on this game generally.
Yeah, I mean, with respect to the East versus West comments, I mean, and I'm saying this a little tongue in cheek, but if you don't like it, you can always go back to the NAIA. It is what it is, and we all know it. So there are certain things that are better left unsaid. Just leave it there. RPI, I mean, they're going to – I liked what Coach Isernia had to say. I mean, basically, they're facing this all-star team, and that's really what North Central is. I mean, there are probably teams in the FCS tournament right now that the Cardinals would beat, and not just by a touchdown, by a few. They're just that loaded, and it's going to be – a real challenge for the Engineers, particularly I think in the secondary. I mean, we really saw that in the Stag Bowl, with Kaminsky, another person's name I'm going to mess up. At least I'm consistent. He just has that next level speed. I mean, none of the Whitewater guys could cover him in the Stag Bowl, and it's going to be a challenge. But at the end of the day, these almost 50 seniors on RPI, I think that's one of the things that we've kind of forgotten or maybe not made a big enough deal on, this extra added experience that RPI has. I mean, these are 23-year-old young men. Like, these aren't just college kids anymore. And so for them to have a chance, they're going to have to, dig real deep and just try to do what they've done all season, bend, don't break, and try to hang in there. But it's a tough draw, because honestly, I have North Central, repeating as the national champions. I don't think anyone's going to beat them. They're just too loaded. Although it was interesting to hear, I think it was Josh who said that they're about the same size as Cortland. Like, they're not, these big guys aren't afraid of their big guys. They're like, yeah, we've seen a similar thing. Maybe they're, a step faster or what have you, but it should be a great opportunity. And at the end of the day, that's, for everyone who likes to beat up the East for not being strong, maybe it's because of matchups like this. And, this is a great opportunity for RPI to acquit themselves really well, like Del Val did 2 years ago. I mean, yeah, sure, they lost, but it was a 14-point game. They didn't get blown out. They probably played North Central just as well as anybody else, maybe even better in some respects. I mean, they didn't give up 59 points. So, hey.
What's your score?
I think it's going to be close early, but then get a little crazy on the back end. So I'll say NCC pulls away late and wins it like 37-14.
Yeah, it's a tough one to try to scope out a score on. That's for sure. The heart versus the head scenario. Your heart says you want them to be close. The head says that North Central is defending national champs for a reason. I haven't really even thought what number to put on it. I'm going to say going away, North Central wins this 34-17, which is very close to your score. I think we just came up with if it wasn't identical. So I look back at the 2003 semifinal game versus St. John's because I was curious as to how the game flow was in that game. And we don't remember that RPI, I believe, had a lead at one point in the first half in that game, and St. John's eventually, it was 10-7. St. John's eventually shut them down from there, and 10 was their final total on the scoreboard. I think this RPI team is actually better than the 2003 RPI team in terms of the maturity and what they're bringing to the table, and that's no slight to the 2003 team. They were an extremely good team, so that should tell you how good this RPI team is in my mind. But obviously, there is a disparity here. So to Coach Smith, yeah, we have some trouble with our travel scenarios out here too, based on who they put as the number one seeds. And I'm not complaining. I'm just stating a true fact here in terms of balance issues that you don't think exist. Okay? I understand, Coach, that you have an extra game because the island situation, that is a tougher game. We get it. But to disparage an entire side of a bracket based on that isn't fair. I do appreciate you. I appreciate your team and everybody around it. And I traveled down to Rome to see you guys play in 2019 and enjoyed that experience immensely. However, we also have to be fair here to the folks on this side of the bracket, per se, and stand up for the fact that they have challenging games too. Okay, there's your score. Okay, last game to talk about, Mount Union, Muhlenberg. Again, let's hear from a player in this game. Spencer Kirin is somebody I interviewed when Muhlenberg had beaten Johns Hopkins. And JB, you're not in this interview. Is this part of this whole statesman on statesman crime situation here? What's going on here?
I had something that came up last minute that I just couldn't get out of, and I apologize. I wasn't trying to avoid or be disrespectful. As usual, you carry the ball just fine without me. So,
Hold on, I'm getting a phone call from Hobart about Nate Milne's trying to take away your degree right now because of the extended statesman crime. So while I take this call, well,
tell Coach Milne to get in line. There's plenty of people at Hobart that don't want they want to get my degree removed. He can just get in line with the rest of them.
Well, in the meantime, hold on one second. In the meantime, we're going to have a question. Basically, how did they blank Del Valle last week?
We thought playing great defense on our side would be important to give our offense opportunities and not put them in bad situations to kind of keep them in good spot. And I think a big thing that helped with the field position, in addition to our defense playing great, a big thing that helped with the shutout, was the field position and a great job on special teams, and the offense not turning the ball over a lot really helped put Del Valle's offense in some bad situations and made them have to put together drives, and we were able to kind of stall their offense and keep the shutout going for the whole game.
Kind of when you look at the score, 14-0, kind of what we call blue-collar mentality of football in Pennsylvania, low scoring, big defensive efforts, etc. Can that kind of game work against Mount Union, do you think, or is your team going to have to score more than 14? How is this going to work? I know you're on the defensive side of the ball here, but can you guys contain Mount Union to 14 or less points, do you think?
I think it really just comes down to kind of how the game goes, how the flow of the game happens. We really won't know until we get into it. We know that Mount Union is going to be a great offense and a great team like they always are, and if we have to win 14-0 again, I think we're ready to do that. But if it turns into a 45-44 game and that's how we have to win, I think our offense is ready to do that as well.
When I saw you last time, it was following the Johns Hopkins game, the victory that you guys had on that Friday night, but that was not too far from the Ursinus loss that your team experienced. And Coach was preaching to me how the growth of especially the youth on the lines was so important that was what he felt was turning this team around. Elaborate on that. Is that what is continuing to happen here? Is it an entire team process? What exactly has gone right since Ursinus that has led to you guys basically not dropping one since that point?
Yeah, I would agree with what my coach said, that the growth of this team has been probably better than the growth of any team I've ever been on. I think with the COVID year and not having football for 2 years, we have 2 new classes of players. So a lot of players that are inexperienced and haven't really, at the beginning of the season, hadn't really played in a varsity college game before. So those first couple of games, I didn't really think we hadn't found ourselves yet. But following that loss and then beyond that point, I think we just really kind of dug in when we realized that we couldn't afford to drop another one. We kind of turned it on from that point on.
Dug in, as in digging mules, which is something we hear a lot of over there. And for folks that are not, big Muhlenberg fans in the norm that might be watching this, what is digging mules? What is that mentality exactly?
The dig-in mentality is kind of just like when times get tough or when things aren't really going our way, we don't complain. We don't think about the past. We move on. We have short memory, and we just put a great effort into whatever situation we're in. Like in the Del Valle game, near the end of that first half, our offense had a turnover with about a minute left, gave Del Valle the ball with good field position, but our defense, we dug in and we were able to stop them and keep the shutout, and that was huge for the win.
You are no stranger to Division III football. Your brother Max, you played alongside for a little bit there as well, if I remember correctly. And so you know the juggernaut that Mount Union is. What would it mean to Muhlenberg if they were able to, in a quarterfinal game on a national stage, beat Mount Union?
It'd be a huge win for us, all the seniors, our whole team, and our whole program. Me and a couple of the guys on the team remember playing them back in 2018. They were a great team then, and we know they're going to be a great team again. But we don't really view this as a David-Goliath matchup. We know that they're a great team, but we think we're a great team too, and we just want to go out there and prove ourselves on Saturday and show what we can do.
What's it been like this season not playing alongside your brother?
It's been different. I've played with him my whole life pretty much. 10 plus years playing football. But really the whole team playing with these guys, I've been playing with them for 4 years. So I still have a lot of brothers on this team, even though I don't have Max with me.
The thing that's always amazed me about you, Spencer, and ever since the day I met you out in that field, in that game we were talking about, you play well outside your frame. You're 6'0", 190 according to the roster. Maybe that's off, maybe it's not. But you seem to play well outside those dimensions, let's say. I've compared to the Ian Barr over at Westminster, who we've had on the show a couple of times, in the same respect. You guys don't necessarily fit this linebacker size idea, but you were racking up tackles and leading your respective teams in ways that people, it's almost fulfilling that whole YD3 mentality that we always talk about. Take it a step further. Have you always felt the need to kind of play outside yourself, to prove yourself out there? And, as you get to the close of your career, which is, no more than 3 games away with what's left here, kind of reflect on your time at Muhlenberg.
Yeah, I would say that I guess I am kind of undersized for a linebacker, but I've never really viewed it that way. I've kind of always known my own strengths as a player and just try to play to that, and I think that I found a good spot in the defense at Muhlenberg, a good role, and I know what my role is, and I try to do it well. And through these 4 years at Muhlenberg, I feel like I've grown so much as a player playing against some of the best offensive players every day in practice with Nico and Michael Feaster and my brother. I've gotten so much better as a player being coached by Coach David and Coach Milne. And throughout these 4 years, I look back at the player I was 4 years ago and the player I am now, and I feel like I'm a much better, more developed, more confident player. And I can't wait to keep playing to the best of my ability for however longer I have.
What's next for you after football and after Muhlenberg?
I guess I got to start working. I got a job lined up with AT&T. Hopefully also want to someday, maybe not right away, but someday look into coaching too. I think that I always want to be around the game of football. I love it too much to let it go.
Not surprised to hear that. So let's one more time go back to this Mount Union game to give people kind of a appetizer here, a little X's and O's at least. For somebody to think that it's going right for Mount Union, what would you say would be happening? For somebody to say things are going right for Muhlenberg, what would have to be happening? Give us that as kind of our entry here to the big game. I
think for us, one of the things that we want to do is always start strong. I think if I'm not mistaken, every season we've scored first. So I think seeing that out of us would mean that it's going good for us at the beginning of the game. And I think that Mount Union is a team that's going to want to keep the ball in their hands and get the ball in the hands of their playmakers and try to get that ball in their hands in open space, allow them to break tackles and get in the open field. So if we're able to keep the ball in our offense's hands and get points on the board first, I think that's going to be the goal of the game.
It's rare to have a battle of two Gagliardi Trophy semifinalist quarterbacks, but that's what we're going to have this weekend as Michael Nikowski and Braxton Plunk, both semifinalists. We'll find out what happens with respect to them possibly moving on as finalists. We don't know. Won't know until the vote's over, December 9th. But for the time being, it should be a great battle for sure. We gave you the opportunity last time. Maybe you forgot some folks. It was the heat of the moment that night, so I'm going to give you the chance one more time for any shout-outs that you have for any family, friends, coaches, anybody there, teammates, all those folks that you want to. Spencer Kirin, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'd like to give a big thank you to my family. They've supported me throughout all my 4 years, coming to all my games. My friends from home as well. And my old high school coach, Larry Luth, he's supported me, sending me texts after every win. So all those guys, my teammates again, of course, my coaches from Muhlenberg. It's been a great 4 years, and I can't wait to just continue it, see how far we can take it this year.
Yeah, I think you should give him one more chance and keep the degree, in place for now. Anyway, we're back. Sorry. Thanks. Bye.
I don't even know if I can show up for my. I don't even know if I could show up for my, COVID punted 25th, reunion that's supposed to be next summer.
You graduated when you were 14 or 13 years old. Is that what happened?
Well, yeah, I was like a Doogie Howser in my no. Anyway,
Spencer Kirin, great guy. Yep.
Yeah, great guy, and he reminds us of Ian Barr. Maybe not the biggest linebacker out there, but he plays with such heart and tenacity. He's like a 6'4", 225, 230, guy with the style that he plays, and he's going to be tasked with a tough order. I mean, Mount Union's become much more of a vertical passing team over the years, but you still got to be ready for that 1-2 punch of those running backs. And Petrocelli is just as good. I made a joke the other day. I can't pronounce names correctly, so just imagine me trying to text and spell them on my phone. And when I tried to type in Petrocelli on my phone, of course I misspelled it, and it turned into Pretty Elite. That's pretty much the truth about this guy. He is an elite running back, maybe not being as used as we might think. It could be an injury situation. Maybe they're trying to limit him carry wise, or who knows? Everyone's banged up. It's week 14, right? So everyone's got some bumps and bruises. But I have a feeling that Mount Union's strategy in this one is going to try to get out to a quick lead with a couple of passes to Ruby, who's probably one of the fastest, if not the fastest receiver in Division III. And then they're going to sit back and lean on that offensive line and run game, which is kind of what they did to Hopkins after they kind of fell into that weird 5-0, 8-7 kind of hole.
So what do you think score-wise? I know it's unfair to make you go 3 times in a row, but what's your final?
I guess, they're still Mount Union. They haven't lost at home in 23 years more than 2 times. So if I'm playing the odds, I have to pick the Raiders, even though it would be great to see the Mules pull off an upset. But, yeah, I mean, if I have to be keep my 3-game lead, I think is what I have. I gotta play it safe on this one. Mount Union 35, Muhlenberg 31.
I won't call Nate Milne this time because we can't bleep out everything on this show. I turned to a friend of the show, a coach that doesn't want to be named, and we will respect that. And I asked the question, do you think the Mules can do it against Mount? And the answer was, yes, I think they definitely can. We'll need to look like a typical Mount John Carroll game. I think the Mules would need a game like 27-24 if they were to win. And I think that's a pretty good assessment there. Nikowski has the ability to get them the 3 to 4 touchdowns that 27 would represent. Now it's a question of whether or not the defense can shut down Braxton Plunk and Josh Patricelli and everybody else in the running department over there as well. Wayne Ruby, obviously, who was the outlet 3 times in the Johns Hopkins game. I'm going to do a rare thing here and pick against Mount Union in this game, which I know I'm setting myself up for a lot of cat calls when I'm there in Alliance this weekend. But this just feels weird, this game. This just doesn't feel like the Mount Union team I'm used to. And they have done all kinds of gymnastics around my ballot in the top 4 slots over this season in terms of the top 25 ballot. Because one week you think you know what you got, and the next week it's kind of like, wait a minute, this isn't that Mount Union team I'm used to. So
yeah, and I'll throw this in there real quick, Frank. This is what now the 17th or 18th regular season game that they played in the 2021 calendar year. I think, even though we sort of talked up how great spring football was and for entertainment purposes for us and, fans and all that, it was great. But now we're starting to see that the teams that didn't play in 2020 are actually faring better late in the year and better in the tournament so far. I mean, time will tell. I mean, basically, I think Mount Union and Mary Hardin Baylor are the only 2 teams. Well, I guess Central played 2 games technically, but you see where I'm going with this. I have a feeling that we might just get a Stag Bowl with teams that didn't play in 2020 just because of, better health, better prep, etc.
27-24 Muhlenberg is my answer. I will go with our coach friend that gave me that advice today because I think it's reasonable advice here. They're going to have to play a perfect game, though, offensively and not turn the ball over 3 times like Ryan Stevens did as quarterback on Saturday in a 10-point game. Imagine if they didn't turn that ball over 3 times in that game, what the landscape of that game would have been. So think about that. Okay, those are the 4 games, and thanks again to RPI Muhlenberg for helping us get those interviews. Mike Falk and Kevin Beatty from Muhlenberg and from RPI, respectively, for their help there. And Coach Milne always helps us out over at Muhlenberg as well. JB, thoughts on the quarterfinals coming up in general here?
Well, at least we get one game that's going to kick off at noon that the whole nation can be solely focused on. And I think you picked a good one, Frank. I think this one's not going to disappoint. Of the 4, this one feels like the one that could have a potential upset in it. So yeah, I think it's going to be an outstanding matchup. And then you got the 3 other games kicking off at 1 Eastern, noon Central. And it's all the big names that we have in this division, So we're down to the Elite 8, and so these are going to be elite teams all fighting for a chance at the Final Four and a national championship. So I'm looking forward to it. It should be great. We'll see you on Saturday around, 11 or give or take, depending on your Wi-Fi situation and whether or not you're buried under a foot of snow or whatever is going on there in Ohio. I hope you dress warmly. I will be basically for here in my air-conditioned house where it's already 70 degrees outside, so I can't complain.
I've got 2 things for you. First off, remember when you were saying 2020 season, I meant to jump in on this earlier. You meant the 2021 spring season, which we kind of default to 2020 just to fill the gap there. Yeah. But number 2, Linfield just called and said you're giving them 0 chance to upset Mary Hardin Baylor. Really? Come on now. There is a chance they can win that game, indeed, a real chance. So we'll see what happens there.
Bring it, guys. Good luck.
We're becoming bulletin board material as we speak on this show. Just want you to know. But folks, thanks for joining us for this 75-minute show that this ends up being. But we wanted to do justice to the second round into the quarterfinals. We will see you this weekend. We will see you next week for our traditional semifinalist interview round with all 4 semifinalists. We attempt to get an interview from each one of them. So stay tuned for that. 2 weeks left after this week is done, folks. I know I'm ready for the end of this because it's been a long year, but thanks for joining us.